Well, good morning, y'all. Oh, right on. Thank you. I keep wondering if Zoom is going to come up with additional reactions other than these, but a thumbs up is much appreciated. Um, so, right on. So I will give you a bit of a presentation um, via Keynote, and I'll start off with an introduction for myself or of myself. And then I'm going to pause and take any questions in real time you would if you wouldn't mind sharing your video with me and your wonderful voice. I'd like to hear directly from you all. So as I'm presenting or as I'm walking us through these slides, please take a moment and write down some questions and then when I pause in about 10 minutes, we can you can ask me some questions. How does that sound? I get like thumbs up right on. Thank you. Thanks. I live for those. Appreciate it. Okay, so I'm going to, let's see, share my screen and um, and take us through what I think is a is a keynote presentation that should help us. Um, right on. Okay. Um, so welcome again. It's Friday of a long weekend. So I hope you all have a great weekend coming up. My name is Marisela Marquez, and I serve as your Executive Director for Associated Students. I also teach for the Department of Chicano and Chicana Studies and Political Science sometimes. Just a little bit about myself. I grew up on the border between Texas and Mexico, in Nuevo Laredo, Tamaulipas, and Laredo, Texas, or Laredo, Texas, and went to school there in Laredo, and then went to San Antonio, Texas, where I studied for my Bachelor's of Arts and my Master's of Arts. And then I came here to UCSB for my PhD in political science. After I completed that, or as I was completing that, as I was writing my dissertation, I actually went to go work in Colorado and Minnesota and taught there at the Colorado College and Carleton College in Minnesota, and then came back here, worked at Santa Barbara City College for the Transfer Center, and then I was recruited back to campus to found a center through the Academic Senate, which was called the Center for Faculty Outreach. I go into this little bit of detail just as a resource for you, meaning that many of you may indeed have either questions, policy related or personal, and it might be helpful to know with whom you're speaking. All of our staff and associated students are extremely talented, extremely well versed in higher education. So, in a lot of ways, I serve as I guess, as a conduit or as an invitation, as a person who can invite you to meet some of us, right now via Zoom, and hopefully in the future in person, where we can talk a little bit more about your careers and trajectories. So to get started, take you through associated students structure and shared governance. Before I start the presentation, I wanted to talk with you a little bit about our status as a department, which, just like the Department of Biology or English, we are a department on the UCSB campus for the UC system, and also we serve as a nonprofit. How many of you know what a nonprofit is? Would anyone want to unmute yourself and share with us what is a nonprofit or an example of a nonprofit agency? Anyone? I know Alina knows. Any thoughts or examples of a nonprofit agency that come to mind?
Would you like me to offer a suggestion?
Yes.
Just thinking of some of our local Santa Barbara agencies, maybe something like the Santa Barbara Food Bank, would likely be classified as a nonprofit. 501c3, for getting technical.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And 501c3 is a good way to remember. It's a funny set of numbers and a letter. 501c3 is a classification by the federal government and the Internal Revenue Service about taxes. And all nonprofits in this country are actually exempt from paying federal, state, and local taxes. And that's because the work that we do is for the public good. It within Associated Students, the way we connect to all of these responsibilities is that we're responsible for policies, um, follow the UC Board of Regents policies, but we also need to follow federal, state, and local policies as they govern these types of agencies, that it's a 501c3 or tax exempt status. So feel free to write down any questions you might have about that. So I'll take you real quickly through this keynote address. Um, Part of what you'll see is, this is just a title page. We have branches of government like we have in the federal, state, and local level of state and local federal level policies are made by introduction and deliberation and conclusion passing of these policies by various branches. And in the Associated Students, we have the executive branch, the legislative, and the judicial branch. Additionally, we have units that are um, that were constructed by students in Associated Students to serve the needs of students, campus, and the association. That, in a simple sentence, is what shared governance is. Things that Associated Students does to serve the needs of, 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 of its students, of the campus, and the association. And in 2014, the AS student body president put together a schemata or a set of drawings to try and represent um, these relationships between what the Associated Students, the Department of Associated Students does, and how it serves its students, campus, and association. And at that time, put together a framework to demonstrate how these work. And the president and controller, as you see in the top right-hand corner, the president, controller, or the internal vice president supervise and support the unit operations. The Senate, of which many of you are part of, oversees these unit functions by approving their budgets, spending, purpose, and long-term plans. These entities have the type of framework that fits into at least these four categories. The first is a philanthropic means. The second are events and media. The third are business enterprises. And the final is advocacy. You will note, if you are a current student, that there are additional boards, commissions, and units that actually are not represented there, and that's because I couldn't get into my computer at school to get my most updated keynote address, keynote presentation. But this shows you a bit of the process of once a board has a mission, there's one way of looking at it, which is, what does it do? What is its purpose? How does it serve? And this is the framework on how to think about that. This is in collaboration and should be within state, federal, local policies, as well as UC Regento policies, as you see in the lower right-hand corner. UC Regento policy governs all of everything that we do in all of these entities. So I'll pause here to see if there are any questions from this diagram. Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask any questions you might have.
Maybe we'll take any questions in the chat as well. I'll let you know.
No? Okay. So I'll share with you some additional information. You know a little bit about some of these branches, meaning their elected officers, which include your president, internal vice president, who's the chair of the Senate, your external vice president of local affairs, external vice president of statewide affairs, and your student advocate general. Then we have an executive office that has a variety of positions, and each year the officers might actually change their own officers' positions or their need based on the needs of what they believe that the students need to receive out of their office. The legislative branch, as we were just describing, is comprised of the Associated Student Senate. There are elected members of that entity. It has specific standing committees. They appoint and govern over administrative committees, boards, commissions, and units. So the standing committees, as you might recall, are the Finance and Business Committee, the External Affairs Committee, Internal Affairs Committee, and Food Security Committee. These were actually the way they were constructed. I believe they may have collapsed some of those functions because they're not always having work or policies, but those can be recreated. Amongst your administrative committees, they include the Investment Advisory Committee, your Honoraria Committee, which handles all the allocation and assessment of the stipends that you all grant to one another. I'll skip down to the Elections Committee, which is the ASUCSB Elections Committee, reviews and really oversees that all of our elections are fair, impartial, and efficient. Your boards and commissions have continued to grow. The last four are at the very bottom: Global Gaucho Commission, Transfer Student Alliance, Public and Mental Health Commission, and the Living History Committee, I believe it is. The Living History Project program actually has been in operation for a long time. It wasn't an actual entity until this past year. As we were describing, the ASUCSB units act as an operational arm of the association and department to either provide a direct service to the student body, campus, local community, or to ourselves. And this is one of the areas that I like to emphasize the most because very few of us think of it in this framework, but I believe that, and I believe more and more, particularly under this COVID-19 regimen that we're under, we've continued to actually provide all these, even though we are remote. So for example, under enterprises, you'll be familiar with many of these, including the bike shop, the food bank, the legal resource center, and the community financial fund, to name a few. Our events and media, such as KCSB, which is 91.9 FM on your radio dial. The bottom line, our media center, and ASPB is short for Program Board. We don't actually have a rally committee, but if anybody wanted to have one, this would be a awkward time to create one, but maybe we need a little bit of rallying. That was initially created for basketball and soccer games and that sort of in-person event. Of course, we have advocacy areas and philanthropic areas as well. Under philanthropic entities, we have those listed, which are the CAB Foundation, Student Initiated Recruitment and Retention Committee, the Coastal Fund, Bike Committee, Community Affairs Board writ large, that is an actual umbrella for many, many operations, the Isla Vista Community Relations Committee, and AS America Reads, America Counts. And I think you could probably add the AS COVID-19 task force to that grouping as well, which is, if you're not familiar with, is still in operation. Working groups were initially created under these areas. They haven't been in operation over the past few years, but if anyone is interested in revisiting some of this, I leave it in here because they were thought through as good clearinghouses for information, as well as service. Um, so I shared these with you already. This is our general operations and function. I wanted to skip to this drawing because it needs also updating, but it has a relationship to one another that we tend to not be aware of very often, meaning it was an attempt to have everything represented on one page, as it were, in this case, a keynote slide, where there's a relationship between the executive branch, legislative branch, and judicial branch, as well as all of our units, as well as all of the career staff and student staff that you employ as a department. And so I invite you to take a look at that. It's also on our website. Um, Finally, shared governance. Students, faculty, and administration share in the governance and policy making that pervades all of the UC system, meaning that the University of California itself is made up of 10 campuses, and there are divisions, the way the academic senate thinks of itself, the academic side of the house of the entire 10 campus plus the office of the president. Relationship to all of it is made by a dual track system of authority and responsibility. That is a strict definition of shared governance. So our faculty are in a relationship with the system, and our faculty are actually in charge of the educational uh, framework and the educational mission of the entire 10 campus system. And we have administration that finances and organizes itself to meet that mission of the University of California. The University of California own mission is tripartite, meaning that there are three parts to it. There is a research, teaching, and community service component to the University of California that is met by collaboration or shared authority and responsibility by both the faculty and administration. Students fall into this, meaning that we are, or students have fought for many years to be literally representative of a student voice into the entire authority and responsibility of running the system. So when you see yourselves assembled, the intent is to develop a voice for students and also to represent that voice. And students, for example, hold seats on all of the academic senate committees. They hold administrative seats within the academic senate and within all the administrative services that are making these policies. Um, the history in and of itself of the academic senate and its shared governance is evolving, my opinion, has always evolved. And I put three data points here where if you go to the Senate, this is the Academic Senate website, they have a full description of the entire slate of academic Senate committees and commissions, committees and councils. Um, so essentially, the academic senate, by these three data points that I put up on the slide, modified the entire demographic of the UC system in the mid to late 1960s, for example, and they continue to do so today. So I thought I'd share with you all an organizational chart of your campus. And this is very relevant for all of our students that are hoping to make policy changes within the UC system, writ large, within the campus of UCSB, and any of the, there's a mirror image of these organizational charts on all the rest of the campuses. On our campus, we have an organization within the academic side of the house that is led by the executive vice chancellor, who is David Marshall. And each of the sort of boxes underneath his office are responsible for the integration, implementation, and direction of the entire academic mission of the campus. Um, we could switch to the Chancellor's office. The Chancellor, of course, oversees the entire campus, and you would see us represented under the Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs. I have a direct reporting relationship to the Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, as well as your president that you elected for this year, who is Davion Beasley. And so I report into two reporting agencies. The first is tied to the running of the campus, and the other is tied to your department. And everyone under the chancellor's, essentially everyone works for the chancellor's office, and this is a framework or a drawing depicting the organizational chart that supports that responsibility. There are a variety of administrative advisory committees that are put together on an annual basis, and they often will invite, in fact, they always invite students to participate in these. These invitations will come directly to your president. An example of shared governance at UCSB, for example, is the responsibilities that are given or granted to the AS president. They can sit as an official representative of associate students at all campus, system-wide, local, state, and federal matters. And you can read the rest of the details here. Really, the way that happens in real life is the president couldn't possibly attend all of these, and so we have an infrastructure to delegate these responsibilities through the Committee on Committees. And if you know of anyone that's interested in serving in any of these responsibilities of shared governance, of running the campus, please have them apply through the campus Committee on Committees, which has its own website, and can do so. So that is a very brief description of shared governance at the University of California level, meaning our 10 campuses, as well as on the UCSB campus, as well as within your association and department. So I'll take a breather here and see if there are any questions about it from any of the slides that I've just shared, or any other questions that you might have. There's also the chat. See, Gerline Pablo, would you like to unmute yourself?
Yeah, I was just wanting to make sure. I always forget where we're back and just read through the slides. I wanted to know where I could find that.
I believe what is occurring is we're recording all of these, and they're going to be posted on a unique website. So after we finish all the trainings, they're going to be posted. We'll distribute the link to that probably on our homepage of AS.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions right now, though? I could go back.
No, not so far. It's pretty straightforward. You did a good job at presenting.
Oh, thanks. There's also the chat box if anyone wants to just write in a question. Oh, there you go. Thank you, Alina. That's the link to the COC, the Committee on Committees. And it's interesting that that name is kind of, it's kind of funny, like what a funny name. There's a matching committee like that in the Academic Senate and the Academic Senates throughout the system, as well as the student government positions throughout the system. And that is, I think, purposeful. I've worked for both the Academic Senate and for associated students here. And it tends to be the most shared governance type of committee, meaning that it lists all of the positions where people can represent either the faculty interest or the student interest. Any questions at all? Anything that you'd like to talk about that wasn't on my presentation and isn't necessarily my my responsibility for this morning? Would you like an example of how to use shared governance?
Yes.
You would? Okay. Do you have any kind of project that you might um, want to make happen that you think would be, something that you want to see how we might be able to do it?
None come to mind, but I would just like to know. Thank you.
You want me to make one up?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Let's say we wanted to have let's say we wanted to have the bus loop drop people off closer to, the university center. Does anybody know what it would take to be able to do that? What would you imagine?
Well, we would probably have to contact the Santa Barbara MTD and like figure out if that's like a route that their buses can take, or like definitely communicating with them and figuring out what that looks like.
Right on. That's right. It's an outside agency. We don't actually run the Metropolitan Transit District (MTD). However, you do pay a student fee. Undergrads and graduate students ride on the MTD for a reduced cost because you collectively put a lock-in fee into place to pay them to come out to campus. And I know because as a graduate student, we actually constructed that contract, and it was hard. It was very hard because the UC has certain needs. Undergraduates and graduate students are somewhat unique from one another in some ways. But in this particular instance, they just needed to get to campus and they needed to stop paying so much. So you're right. It is by contract an agreed upon process. There is also a process that's supposed to be occurring, meaning for every time there's I believe it's every 5 years, there's supposed to be a public conversation about how well is it going. I haven't personally seen that very much. I don't know if anyone else tracks that, but it is a condition of the lock-in fee that occur. But let's say everybody just decided that they, on one end of the contract, meaning our side, the student side, you wanted to change the route. You would need to have a conversation with them, but you'd also need to have a conversation with each other, and you'd need to have a conversation or series of conversations with the university so that the actual flow of traffic could be managed around that side of campus, right? And so what I'm seeking to illustrate is that any and all changes, whether they're physical, meaning that we might actually have to put up a little sign, or we might actually need to have like a bench or a place for folks to congregate, or have a place for it to turn around on that side of campus. Those are all physical changes. There's also policy related changes, and there might be some monetary changes to the way we pay for the service. So those are actually it's a very good illustration of a shared governance system that involves us, associate students, the UC campus, and an outside agency that provide this on a day-to-day basis. Like most people just get on the bus or don't get on the bus. However, you all are in a position where in this department, you could actually make some changes to things like that are either physical in nature, that have some policy connection, as well as some financial transactions that could be enhanced, decreased, not touched at all because of the need to make one change. And so that's an illustration of how shared governance might work. Internally, before one would talk to the MTD, one might actually go through a whole internal process of talking from our department to maybe the representatives of the academic senate, of the staff, and of the administration, so that we might be of one voice before we actually approve or seek out approval from the MTT to change one of its routes. So that's an example of of a very straightforward relationship that we have that is shared.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Any other questions? Any other policies you might want to change? No? All right. Well, I have office hours dedicated for students beginning at the beginning of the school year that are usually Friday afternoons from 3 to 5 or by appointment. So my email is mmarq@ucsb.edu. And you could also just reach out to me even before school starts, and we could talk through some of the projects or ideas that you have that you might want to change. I see a few folks on this call that with whom I have met, even just since, since May. So either way, if you'd like to reach out to me collectively or individually, please feel free.
And then a little bit outside of my moderator role today, I just want to offer my quick little opinion. Y'all, Marisela has been here since before I was here, been here for almost 10 years. She was appointed by students, I think, for a lot of her experience and just the institutional memory that she has being and working here as a student, as a staff member, as a faculty member, and seeing all of these different sides of how the university works. So I think you all have a great resource. I encourage you to talk to your advisors about how you can utilize her and be to like your group's benefits, and so I encourage you to ask questions. She's here and always very available. So thank you, Marisela.
Oh, thank you, Alina. Thank you for hosting today. And did you introduce yourself, or did I introduce yourself? I don't think we did.
I didn't quite. I was gonna take like just a little back roll, but I was also interested in your presentation. So hi y'all. I know some of you. My name is Alina Mojarro. I am Associated Students Community Education Outreach Coordinator. I work very closely as the coordinator for the America Reads, America Counts tutoring program. We hire student staff through AS. And then I also work very closely with the Community Affairs Board, IVCRC. I see some of y'all here, the Community Volunteer Foundation, and really just a resource for you all. So I hope to see you and work with you throughout this school year so that we can really make your programs successful.
Right on. Well, I hope you all have a great weekend, and don't forget to sign in to the sign-in sheet. That'll help a lot. And again, I really hope that the slides help, but really it should raise as many questions as anything. What does BCU mean? It means boards, commissions, and units. And the C is really two C's because we have some commissions, we have some committees, we also have an alliance, and it was really meant to. What we tried to do is really allow for your agency to create your boards, your representative bodies in whatever way we might want to do that. We are calling ourselves, or you all are calling yourselves, entities overall to cover it all, as Alina just described in the chat box. But yeah, the idea is to be responsive and to allow for your own self-agency, but also we're proud of you. We want to talk about you. So we have to have some nomenclature to be able to talk about your good work. And so that's what they are.
Any other questions, comments?
No? All
See
right.
none.
All right. We'll see you soon, hopefully. And please feel free to reach out and have a great weekend. Be safe out there.
Ready weekend. Please wear your mask.
All right. See you.